we know and recognize with a focus and emphasis on wellness, it's about the physical you that shows up, the social and emotional you that shows up, the mental you that shows up each and every day. So it's important that all of those pieces have the support and the resources so that they can be whole, they can be healthy, whether that's the adult in the system as a staff member or in the home, or the student, the child or children in the home.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to this edition of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. I'm Tom Murray, your host, and I couldn't be any more excited. You all are in for a treat. With me today is the one and only Dr. Michele Bowers. Michele, you are here. Thank you so much for giving of your time. As a superintendent, you are putting out fires left and right, and here you are pausing to share your knowledge with the rest of the world. Michele, thanks for being here.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. I'm so excited to be here. And, anytime I have a chance to get with a friend and discuss great things going on in education and in our schools, in our communities, I'm there. So thanks a lot for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, every time we've connected, your passion radiates about your passion, your love for your kids, your community, your people. And so I am so excited about this conversation. So let's open up. Just tell us a little about where you are, the district that you serve, where in the country you are, just so people can get some context.
Absolutely. I am in lovely Lancaster, California, the high desert, and we are in the far north end of Los Angeles County. I am proud to have served as superintendent here for the last 10 years. We are a preschool through 8th grade district, serving about 15,000, close to 15,000 students. Many of our students, we have close to about, I'd say 90%. That are eligible are identified as low socioeconomic. And we have a very diverse population with serving approximately 52% Latinx, about 30% African American, and about 25% Caucasian. So, and then we have some others in there as well. But we are blessed because each and every day we have an opportunity to see the good work, to see the great things, to see the excitement, the passion and appreciation of our students on their faces. They're showing up for us. So it's our job and an honor to show up for them each and every day.
Well, that excitement and passion is shown by their leader each and every day and already coming through on the podcast, which we love to see. Well, it sounds like it's an amazing place to be. And
it is.
I will tell you selfishly, living in Eastern Pennsylvania, every time I fly out of your region of the country, I wonder why in the world I live in Eastern Pennsylvania when I fly out of Southern California. So love your area of the country. But let's take a moment, if we could, let's reflect a little bit back on the pandemic. Obviously, you've said you've been there as superintendent for 10 years, but the last 2 has probably felt like 20. So it feels like a lot more, I'm guessing. The chaos in the world, the fear in the news, the anxiety that's out there, on the outside of our walls, but also permeates the inside of our walls. And so our theme with the podcast for this season is really around overcoming adversity, resilience from our staff members, because in the midst of such chaos, our staff is often providing such calm and just a place to be and trust in our community, where our students can go and they know they're going to be at a safe place, even with the headlines that are all around us and those types of things. So share a story, if you would, or talk a little bit about just overcoming adversity and the resilience that you've seen from your team and from your people.
Oh my goodness, I'm not even sure where to start. I would say the resilience permeates in the entire community, because when I think about the last couple of years, especially, and the number of changes and the flexibility that we're asking of people and the amount of new learning, because technology is doing so much virtually at the last minute and everyone jumped in. I think about not just staff, but I think about our family. So that was a big lift, a huge ask. One day you have a normal routine, you're taking your kids to school, and then the next day it's like school's closed, and a week later, here's some technology, here's some packets, and you get to be their teacher for the next year and a half. So you talk about resilience, it started at home with those parents. Resilience was shown with our staff members who showed up day one to bring those lunches. I need you to do this. We need to pivot and start serving meals this way. We need to pivot, and I need you to take this professional development training so that you know how to communicate with the students and utilize technology. People showed up in spite of all the things they may have been dealing with, because the pandemic didn't just affect other people. The pandemic affected everyone. So many of our staff members, many of the families we serve, the students, had to deal with loss going on, had to deal with personal illness, had to deal with maybe loss of jobs or housing insecurity or so many other things, and show up for each other here in a school setting, because the schools, while they may have not been open for in-person learning, we still continued to provide that education. We were still looking at ways to provide the resources, the food, the clothing, the other essentials that we could make available to our families and to our staff members. What kind of childcare, what we could do with our counselors and our psychologists to support folks that were going through different things. So we talk about resilience. Yeah, people stepped up. They continued to smile. They continued to bring heart, passion, and commitment for the work. And more importantly, heart, passion, and commitment for the people, and especially for our kids.
Absolutely love that. And just hearing your passion for your people is incredible. And it really leads me to something that I know that you value. And it's something that's been put really front and center on the map with COVID. And that's the notion of mental health and the importance of mental health and the role of mental health plays, whether we're talking about our colleagues and us as a staff or our children as well. So talk to us, your colleagues, other superintendents across the country, how you've prioritized that, some of the things that you're doing, what that looks like to show the value in that, and understanding this isn't also just about the pandemic. This is something we really need to keep front and center moving forward for the rest of schooling. Let's put it that way.
Yes, moving forward, it's here and it's here to stay, and it should be. So the pandemic really did highlight and create a space and opportunity for folks to look at the fact that a lot of people were going through a lot of things, and they were not just okay. So yes, we saw across the nation, we saw an increase in suicide rates. We saw increases in people just reaching out saying, I need some help. I'm not okay. And as we started returning students back to in-person learning, we saw the effects of the lack of that socialization, the lack of being around of their peers and interacting in person, and some things, some behaviors that we needed to be able to support, some learning, some ways to interact. But I think at the end of the day, it really did serve to remind us that it is extremely important now more than ever. It's always been important, but again, now more than ever, that we pay attention to and support each other, to ourselves. We take care, we do that self-care piece. How do we take care of ourselves first? Put that oxygen mask on ourselves and make sure we're okay, and figure out ways to address our own stress, figure out ways to find that balance, figure out ways to deal with loss and grief as appropriate. And when we're not okay, what resources do we have to reach out to? And here in our district, we recognize that we were quick to make sure that we really hyped up our implementation on social and emotional learning so that every child would have access to that information, access to the supports, hiring additional counselors, additional school psychologists to make sure they had that, getting some additional resources for staff members so that they had access to more employee assistance programs, more stress relief programs, more self-care information and webinars and programs like that, more information on how to take care of yourself just physically, eating healthy, getting rest, and what that looks like, because we know and recognize with a focus and emphasis on wellness, it's about the physical you that shows up, the social and emotional you that shows up, the mental you that shows up each and every day. So it's important that all of those pieces have the support and the resources so that they can be whole, they can be healthy, whether that's the adult in the system as a staff member or in the home, or the student, the child or children in the home. So we saw kind of the ripple effects of the pandemic at every level across the board. It did not spare anyone. So it's important, as not just today, but moving forward, that we continue to create those safe spaces for people to get that help, for people to ask for that help, and for us to recognize that that help is needed and critical.
Absolutely. And wow, the mindset of a superintendent and sharing all the things that you said. The very first thing I'll say is I would put my babies under your care any day of the week with what you just shared. That's my first thought off the record. But my second piece, let's dive a little bit further. Obviously, it shows your heart for people and valuing people, but let's also dive a little bit further with our students. You know, it's interesting when we think about SEL, you know, it's not a new concept. It's been around for a long time, and it's almost been here's the one add-on lesson. Here's the one activity we're going to do. If we're honest, in some places, well, hey, that's nice to have, but we don't have time for that. How do we combat, it's been, when we look at it, I know every district in the world has at least talked a little bit about mental health and SEL. It's like saying they recognize, unless they're totally blind, they recognize this is totally a need. But one of my fears as we emerge from the pandemic is it goes back to, well, if we can get to it and we get back to the test scores and all those pieces. So what advice do you have for your colleagues across the country in how we prioritize SEL, and saying it's not that it's a nice to have, it's something that we absolutely need, because it's that, that whole child notion, recognizing that we need to support them on all these different levels. So what does that look like, the SEL side? I know you started to touch on it a little bit there, but in your district, how do you keep it a priority when we have all these pressures of testing and all that stuff? So what does that look like? What advice do you have?
Well, I think it's important that as you think about it like you would any other core content area. So what is it, or how do I approach math, language arts? How do I approach those things? I build time for it. I make sure I have the resources for it. I make sure people are trained in how to deliver it appropriately. One thing that I would add in thinking about embracing the fact that it's here to stay, if we don't address that, if we don't incorporate that into our everyday way of doing things, we're going to continue to deal with things that become distractions and disruptions in our school. We deal with, when we deal with children that are hurting, children that are in need, they're not able to focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're focusing on something else going on. So whatever we can do to help address that, help meet that need, help identify what might be getting in the way of the reading, writing, and arithmetic, we're not going to be able to support them in a meaningful way that's going to lend itself to their success as a person. And I would say that is the same truth as it applies to adults. But thinking about how do we keep that at the forefront, it's a great opportunity for us to maybe revisit and rethink how we prepare our teachers, how we prepare our educators, because there needs to be as much emphasis and support on that in teacher prep programs, and thinking about how this season, what have we learned in this season that could inform some changes, potential changes moving forward in how we prepare our teachers. Do we give them that support on how to teach SEL, or how to recognize various things, how to respond when there's inappropriate behaviors or comments without escalating a situation even more? So how do we respond in a compassionate way? Where are the resources that they need to go to get to that? So thinking about how do we incorporate that into our readiness programs for our staff members, and how do we even create environments and structures that lend themselves to a little bit more flexibility, that's going to be more conducive to how our kids learn how they show up every day, and what that structure and framework needs to look like now versus maybe, I don't know, 50 years ago when we started all of that structure. It's time to maybe revisit what we were doing and why we were doing it then. And now what are we doing and why are we doing it?
Yeah, so brilliantly said. Another area that really also relates to some of this on a little bit larger scale, moving just from the student to the community, is your passion and the move towards community schools. And so,
Oh,
especially in a good sized district like you're in, talk to us a little bit about what that means to you, how you've gone about doing that, and what that looks like.
well, I'm excited about the emphasis and the movement more towards community schools and the support that we see, the growing support that we see both at federal level and at a state level. And now we see it more so even at a local level. So being able to acknowledge that there are communities like Lancaster where families need all sorts of resources so that they can show up as a whole person without the distractions and without the disruptions. But a community school allows us to bring those resources into the school or easily connect those resources with families. So we are just recently, one of the things I'm real excited about, we just recently formed a partnership with an organization that's going to be providing some telehealth services to our families. A few years ago, I started a welcome and wellness center in our district. And in addition to registration, that wellness center provides supports to our homeless families, to our foster families, anyone that's in need. We have established several partnerships with local organizations that make donations of clothing and shoes and diapers and formula and all sorts of things, backpacks for our kids and school supplies and all sorts of things to say, okay, we want to help support these families, support these kids so that they can feel good about the space that they're in, where they are, and know that there's hope and help available. And that is coming through our school systems. A lot of people don't know how to navigate 20 different resources to try to tap into the support or get access to the support that they need. But if they can tap into the school and get access to all of those things that they need, what a powerful thing. So I'm excited because community schools really does kind of move us in that direction so that we can better support our families.
Absolutely. With such exciting stuff and truly becoming that hub of a community, as you see in sometimes smaller places, but in a larger district like yours as well, that can really happen. And so
Oh, it
kudos to
can.
you and your team for leading all of that work. So kind of one more big question for you before we
Sure.
wrap up. All for Ed, my home organization, Future Ready Schools, is an equity focused organization. And, when we talk about equity, we look at access, we look at opportunity, and the pandemic has really brought that front and center. And we like to say that the pandemic didn't create equity issues. It amplified equity issues that have always existed and brought them
Mhm.
to the forefront, whether it's access, opportunity. Talk to us a little bit from a superintendent chair about your mindset around equity, creating those equitable opportunities for students, especially in a good sized district like that you have. It's been amplified by the pandemic, but what's that look like in your district and how you moving it forward?
Oh, you see, you're trying to get me on my soapbox, but but that's okay. I'm gonna let you go there with me because for me, equity and access is so extremely important. And you're right. There have been problems and concerns and disparities long before the pandemic came along. So yes, the pandemic has served to say, whoa, look what's happening over here. And everyone has rushed around. There's been a flood of money pushed down to try to fill some of those gaps and try to provide some technology, try to provide more access to internet. And everyone, a lot of that is well-intentioned and greatly appreciated to address an urgent need in the moment. My hope and prayer is that we can all think past the moment and think about the sustainability of this access, the sustainability of technology and access to internet, not just in school, but in our entire community. So it shouldn't be, you have to, if you serve homeless kids, here's something that was a big aha for many folks, because approximately 5% of the families that we serve are homeless. So I can put technology in your hand, and I can even say, we're going to get you Wi-Fi. But if you don't have a home to plug into, how does that help you? How does that help? So if there are more points of access in our community, and we can start treating technology and that access and that training as a utility, as the oxygen, just like the oxygen we breathe, the lights we turn on, the water that we use, it's not going to go away. So when we think about equity and access, we really need to think about the communities that are underserved, and in that specific area, and how we can continue to sustain this into the future, because technology, as we know, has an end of life. So how do we create cycles that ensure that that access is going to be ongoing long after the one-time monies go away? How do we create skills that can be sustained long after the one-time money goes away? So we have to focus not just on one-time things, we have to focus on strengthening and building capacity within our systems. We have to really look at a systems approach of how we can strengthen, kind of do an interconnectedness and strengthen all things that are going to touch and impact the lives of our children, whether that's in the community, in the home. How do we continue to build and strengthen on that family engagement? And parents have been more involved in the last couple of years than ever before. So let's not lose that. Let's not roll it back and say, well, we don't need you anymore, because we need your continued involvement. We need your continued support. And I think together, this opportunity to do bigger, better for our kids is here. It is in front of us. So hopefully we continue to take advantage of that and engage in meaningful conversations and in meaningful work with all of our partners, whether that's organizations, whether that's parents, whether that's students and staff members. But everyone is an important stakeholder. So we need to bring everyone to the table to be part of the work and part of the conversation, and be willing to listen and maybe open to change.
Yeah. Absolutely love your viewpoint on that. And I also love you pairing equity with sustainability. And I really believe there's a fiscal cliff coming 3 years from now when those ARP funds dry up. And here we are with things are good in the next couple of years. We got lots of money coming in. But to your point, when it stops, how do we make sure that the stuff we've been buying can be repurchased? Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a really, really bad spot that was really well intended, but in a really bad spot 3 years from now if we're not careful. So you're focused on sustainability with equity, I think totally is key. So I want to also interject real quick before we wrap up. You're also, I believe, the incoming president for the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators, if I got that correct.
Oh, you said it in one breath too.
I did. I tried to say it in one breath. Thought I had it. I've connected with the organization before. I think the world of it. But for those of us that are listening that aren't sure what the organization is, can you give like a 1-minute commercial into how they might get connected or resources or that kind of thing? As and it's incoming president, is that correct?
It is. I have served as the proud president-elect for the last 2 years, and this March have the privilege and honor of being sworn in as the president for the next 2 years. So very excited to be part of the organization, and CAAASA, as it is lovingly known. We have focused on really supporting African American administrators, African American students, and all of the allies out there that acknowledge and see the need for this support, as we focus on building that teacher administrator pipeline so that more students can have teachers and administrators of color in front of them or involved with their educational life, and that we can help to promote and support various programs and services and resources that African American students benefit from. I don't have to tell you, my friend, that, and you know very well, when we can go way, way back, but when we start looking at disproportionality and disparities, African Americans have been part of that gap conversation. forever. So whatever we can do to enlarge the audience and increase the volume and invite more people to the conversation to say, no, it's not just about talking about it, it's about being about it. So what actions can we focus on to really move systems change in a direction that is going to support all students, but especially our students of color?
Awesome. Well, thank you for that shout. I encourage those listening to check out. It's CAAASA. There's 3 A's in there, correct?
Three A's in there.
That's right. Got that too. Wasn't going to mess that one up. So thank you for that. We encourage you, if you're listening, to check that out. That's some of the most important work right there happening in our country in terms of addressing a true need. So thank you. So Michele, one final question for you. I'm going to let you go because I know your world is crazy. And by the way, leading that in all your free time right now as the incoming president, right? So anyway, so you are somebody that just radiates hope. And so the question I really want to end on, like I do for the vast majority of our guests, what is it 2 years into a pandemic with all the fear, all the anxiety, all the stuff that's out there happening, the news that we turn on, what is it that gives you hope right now?
Woohoo. Well, you know what? I'm going to go back to where we started, and that is really seeing the resilience of individuals that, and especially in our educational community, because we are still standing, we are still doing the hard work, and our kids are still being successful in spite of all of the challenges that have been put in front of them. And so with that said, I think it's worthy. And when I think about hope, I think it's very worthy that we that are in the system at every level, legislators, educators at the higher educational institutions, educators at district levels, across the board, that we really start to engage in conversations about different ways of learning, different ways of doing things, different, flexibility in what that educational structure can look like. And I don't even want to say should look like, but flexibility is key, because one thing that we've learned in this season is there's more than one size fits all. It doesn't have to be one way or the highway. So if and when we can really take this opportunity to focus on the needs of the individual child, I think we can do amazing things, and we can break a mold or establish a new framework that lends itself to more success for more kids based on how they learn, what they're interested in, what they choose to excel at. And when we talk about reach their full potential, that truly does promote that success.
Wow, wow, wow. If you were a listener, I told you it's going to be one of those episodes. That is the one and only Dr. Michele Bowers. Michele, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you again for inviting me. We will talk soon. Take care.